Summary, the recommendation is to progress, to agree to progress the list in Appendix 3 relevant to Eden as well as Thank you.
Thank you. I'm well aware that we've given you a small mountain of work to get through, and I'm very impressed that you've been able to sit it the way it has so far. And I'm also very aware that you probably don't want every decision that you're making being subject to VAR or the equivalent. I'm sure councillors will have questions about the report before we go on to formal proposals and votes and such like. Oh my goodness, yes, don't we just? Okay, I'm going to go all the way down that way and all the way back up that way. Pat.
I'm happy at this stage to propose the recommendation so that we can start our discussion. I'd like to thank officers for all the huge amount of work that you must have done to get it to this stage. As a local member for Penrith Club, I am disappointed that Penrith isn't in, but I absolutely accept that you can't do it all at once and you have to make a decision. So I just look forward to that in the future. So happy to propose the recommendation.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to second that as well.
Thank you, Mary. Who else had their hands up going down this way? It was Judith next, wasn't it?
I'm rather like Clifton. I've got growth over my patch and we've got lots of schooling issues and the school in the middle of the village, so I'm sad that it's not on the list, but I am glad that they're moving in Pasadena. I'm keen to know what else works. Start with, if this lot are coming back January 2025 for approval, does that mean the second lot will be coming back January 2026? I'm just sort of thinking time scales, or would we be able to speed it up as we get into the process, to be able to get the year 2 ones in place earlier, if you know what I mean. I'm just smiling at it. Yeah.
Good question. I think there's a heck of a lot of work to get this listed in total across the whole area of 28 schemes. So we want to start work on the year 2 and 3 schemes within the first year, because particularly in Penrith, you mentioned Kendal, or other big towns where there will be a lot of work to do before we get into the first part of initial consultation in terms of engagement and design. So we need to start that in year 1. Hence some of those are put further back to enable them to come forward delivering 2 and 3. The programme for 2 and 3 isn't set out in stone, so we would like to bring things forward. If there are ones we can bring forward quicker before January 26, but the reality might be that it will then be another best part of the year to get the next phase ones through.
It's just useful to know when we're talking parish council meetings to be able to give feedback. And is there anything else that communities can be doing, and us as Western as councillors, to help move forward the process? So when we are starting to look at, well, we're looking at Pasadena and Glenredding, but also then looking at other ones being put forward, that we've got everything prepared and ready. So when you're looking at them, you've got all the information you need. Is there anything more we can be doing?
I mean, we will be engaging with all the town and parish councils as we move through the programme in terms of and looking for assistance from town and parish councils where possible with the initial consultation. We'll get to each local community in terms of where they can help us with their own publications to put in information about the upcoming schemes and designs to help us with getting information out locally to people and things. But that will come in time and in turn, so probably not anything specific in the short term.
Moving on down.
It's more of a question really. How many of the ones that you've approved for the first tranche actually are related, have schools and playgrounds within those village? I'm thinking of, the support for looking after our young people.
I couldn't tell you, I haven't.
Could you give us an answer later?
Yeah.
Certainly later, but is that
Are
okay?
you talking about Hotford Eden, the Eden?
The easy, yeah, just the easy.
Yeah, schools and playgrounds.
Yeah.
I would think, and I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
I feel
I've
so.
got it to hand.
Thank you.
We all know the answer in our own words, but going around all the table, picking out all the answers would take a bit long, I think. Mike?
Yeah, just as this has come to us, it's reported in the press that Wales has withdrawn their universal 20-mile scheme. Have we actually found out the reasons why it didn't work as well as expected in Wales? So we can actually learn lessons from that, from their experience.
Well, yes, in that they haven't withdrawn their policy, but they have taken a totally different approach, which is to replace all restricted roads, which are roads by virtue of street lighting subject to 30 miles per hour, and they have made that subject to 20 miles per hour, so that's changed across the whole of Wales. What they have now, what they are now looking to do, my understanding, is where that has happened, but it hasn't been a logical reduction to 20, i.e. if you've got there is one section that's dual carriageway in the middle of the town, because it has streetlights became 20, but does not make logical sense, but they are revisiting where the 20 has happened. They don't call it blankets, so I'm not going to say blanket because they're difficult, but they changed their policy to make all restricted roads 20, but there are locations where that isn't logical, and that's what they're reviewing. So as such, they're not really withdrawing it totally. I think they're responding to the areas of greatest criticism where it didn't make sense.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
It's probably also fair to say that there was something top-down which doesn't always work, where this is very much more bottom-up with people applying for their own communities.
One of the underlying factors with our policy is that it's got to be in collaboration and engagement with our local communities, hence the strategy to go out to town and parish councils in the first instance to ensure that that is, as you say, where the requests are coming from.
Neil, you were next.
Thanks, Sean. I'm going to say I'm afraid I have to go out with these items or I've got another meeting tonight. So thanks for the presentation, Victoria. And I recognise that insofar as it was possible to bring all factors into account, we used a very systematic process here. And I think we should all need to respect that because, Chair, we all wanted as many as possible of these zones where they were feasible within our wards. And we knew that some people would be disappointed. But I think we members do have to express confidence in the process that was followed, albeit though subject to any feedback, we can review that in the future. So obviously, so in terms of my ward, I know the hard work that was put in by both Stockbridge and Tyrrell and Clifton parish councils into preparing their bids, and Clifton, as we heard actually in the public presentation earlier, have made 2 attempts. And so I very much hope officers will go back to individual parishes who failed this time, explain where they were unsuccessful, and encourage them to apply again with suggestions for how this can be improved. And I have to say I did my best with one of my parish councils, which hasn't been successful. And there will be further dialogue on that. But professional feedback from officers like yourself will be hugely appreciated. Hope that can happen. And in terms of the rationale deployed, have you got paragraph 3.4.2 in front of you, where it says the inclusion of the deliverability weighting to ensure that schemes with the greatest support suitable baseline, suitable baseline average speeds and so on. So I'm not actually sure where the average speed of at or near 24 miles an hour comes in here. Could you explain the thinking on that?
I can. I'll go back to your first one afterwards, but the Department for Transport setting local speed limits guidance for local authorities on use of 20 miles per hour does set out that existing speeds should be at 24 miles per hour or below when considering a 20 mile an hour scheme to ensure you get the greatest level of compliance.
Likelihood of compliance, yeah, okay.
And in relation to your first point, just for clarity, the ones on Appendix 2 that haven't gone forward in the first year will not have to apply again. They haven't been reviewed, they just haven't been put forward as the first phase.
Okay.
They are in the mix for years 2 and 3, but they are just to follow, and we haven't set out the order of those yet because some of that will be determined by collection of traffic data, engagement back with parish councils and town councils, and the steps it takes to design some of those schemes, because some of them will need quite a lot of work, so it may
Yeah.
end up being free and others come forward.
So that's taken on board.
Yeah,
So
so nobody
that
has to apply again, nobody's been
Hopefully,
thrown out.
partial relief to some disappointed parish. And we do know, I think we all agree that even where there isn't absolute compliance with 20 mile an hour zones, drivers generally drive more slowly than they would do otherwise if there wasn't 20 miles an hour. So, and that to be noticed in both Scotland and Wales, albeit though, as has been already said, we recognise that top-down schemes are not in any scenario. But so finally, Chair, looking at paragraph 3.4.4, the second paragraph under that section, it says following initial consultation and subject to local support. Well, my understanding was that the local support should already be engaged before the application was made. That was part of the process, so I'm a little bit surprised.
We asked through the application process for applications to indicate the known level of local support, but actually it was quite varied, and obviously different councils undertook different methods of achieving that. So what is a requirement of our service procedure as the traffic regulation order is to undertake initial consultation, and that is to determine a level of support, but it's also to determine the extent of the scheme. So it's a process whereby we will submit a design of the extent of the 21 scheme, where the signs will be placed and things, and it's a chance for feedback on that as well. So it's getting the full picture of the support for the scheme as a whole, and then subject to that being favourable, it will progress to the legal order stage.
Okay, thanks very much for putting in speaking.
Thank you. Bill.
Thank you. For all those who feel particularly miffed about this process, we surveyed all 1,500 of our residents in Kirkby Stephen. We were successful. We accept without any complaints at all the scoring matrix, which I'm sure you applied fairly. I think feedback would be appreciated by those who were unsuccessful the first time round. My comments are 11.3, additional funding will need to be identified for schemes that will be delivered in years 2 and 3. Because there's no absolute certainty that we will have the funding for that. Because £300,000 was made available in this first year, which won't necessarily be made available subsequently. So there's no absolute certainty that those schemes will go ahead. And 11.2 do say the council is expecting to receive match funding contributions from town and parish councils. I hope they're aware of that, because it was something that was actually given them as a possibility to some volunteers some money. But I'm absolutely saying that they don't think that's an obligation that's placed upon them.
You can elaborate on that.
Yeah, elaborate on that.
So, we are looking, so I mentioned that when we start to do initial consultation, we're looking to work with parish and town councils to use any methods they already have for getting in touch with their residents. If they have a local magazine or a local newsletter they already send out, to utilise that as a method of getting out our consultations to the community. So we're looking at that as a match funding in kind,
Okay.
rather than a monetary value, but actually utilising things they already have in place. And the possibility, we're looking at exactly how we're going to undertake the initial consultation stage in terms of public meetings. I'm not sure how we're going to be able to resource from our team attending 28 public meetings in every village of these. So at one point we're thinking that parish councils may have halls and things that we could use at limited cost perhaps for these specific meetings. Again, another match funding in kind. However, I think what we might have to do when it comes to it is actually have hubs of consultation where anybody, so we have 3 or 4 meetings set up across Eden where we talk about any of the 12 schemes on over a number of nights, and anybody could come to any one of the hubs to talk to people about their scheme rather than representation in every village, because I think they're going to struggle to resource that. That we're looking how we exactly do that at the moment, but that is what we meant with the match funding. In terms of future year funding, you're absolutely right, it isn't secured. However, we have a lot of dialogue with Council Peter Thornton, and that is something we're looking at, how he's adamant that we will be able to resource the funding for the future years, so we're working with him on that.
Can I say, Chair, he's the most obliging man I've ever met. He says yes to everything. Thank you.
He's also very determined, and it was a manifesto commitment, so I'm sure he'll have the ear of the cabinet at some point. Michael.
I just want to point out that there's no such entity as Mented Parish Council. It's actually Alston Moor Parish Council, and Mented is a ward of Alston Moor Parish.
Apologies. I'm amazed if that's the only one, though.
Right, so the second thing is that at the February meeting of Alston Moor Parish Council, I'm a member of the Parish Council, and we voted to apply for this. I have no idea why, what happened, but I remember commenting I've got 10 days to make the application, so I should have plenty of time. I contacted, because when I read this in the last few days, I was a bit consternated that we weren't included, so we're going to have to find out what happened, what happened to that application. So my question is, does that mean we're out? Can we apply at this beyond the application?
Sorry, what parish was that?
Alston Moor.
And what was missing?
Sorry?
What was Alston itself?
Well, as I said, at the Alston Moor Parish Council meeting in February, we discussed whether we should apply for a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and the majority of the council voted in favour. So we passed that to the parish clerk to apply, and apparently it hasn't happened. So I'm not sure what has happened. So that we'll find out. But what my question is, have we missed the boat?
We have got a very huge number, so it is possible that I would still suggest you make that the application comes in if it's supported. We will have, whether we'll be able to look to slot it in somewhere might be a consideration further down. The programme's going to be pretty full for the next 3 years, so it might be quite tricky. But I won't rule it out, because when we go through initial consultation, there may be examples where some of the level of support indicated isn't replicated, and some may have other solutions in some locations rather than just a 20-mile-an-hour
So
speed. And there may then be an opportunity.
So we put an application in.
So put one in. We may have missed. I'd be very sad to find out it was one that we did receive and haven't. Don't think so.
Well, I think as I say, we haven't investigated whether the application went in or not, but we can do that. Thank you.
Chairman, I think Michael and I will follow this up offline, but the Mented one, I think, is just for the length of road that is in front of the school, which is off the bin 686. So I can understand that. So when it goes to consultation, then that process will go through. It might not be the whole of Alston that needs to be 20 mile an hour, so I think we need to follow it up, don't we?
Well, Mented and Alston are about 5 miles apart.
Well, they are for long ways
So they're
around,
not connected at all,
Yeah.
except they're part of the same parish council.
yeah.
But the reassurance is very welcome, the reassurance from Victoria is very welcome, and that, as you say, you can maybe debate the geography of that off.
Well, where it went to, because I was the meeting.
That's right.
It was up here.
Right, are there any other questions? In that case, we have a proposer and a seconder. Do you want to speak again, Patricia? Mary, you were seconding. Did you want to speak again? Do any other members want to speak on this topic? In that case, can I see those in favour, please, of the recommendation we've got in front of us? Are there any against or abstaining? That's approved unanimously. Thank you very much indeed for that. That takes us rapidly on to number 10, which is Penrith Parking Protocol. And Laura, you stay there and tell us all about it, and then we'll vote.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to update members following the informal consultation from the draft parking protocol. Sorry. The report does expand on it, however, a quick run through on why we need to introduce the protocol. So a parking movement study was carried out between 2019 and 20. joined by Penrith Town Council, the former District Council and the County Council at the time. The overarching aim of the study was to understand how existing parking provisions in Penrith can be enhanced whilst maximising connectivity. So recommendations were made as part of the report, and from a highway perspective, they were to address on-street and off-street provisions by making changes to the traffic regulation orders mostly. Before the traffic regulation order changes were made, what was agreed was that there needed to be some form of protocol introduced into the regulation order that allows us to provide a fair and consistent approach into the way that we provide resident parking permits for on-street parking. We currently, as an authority, we currently do follow a process, but if we are challenged because we haven't got that protocol to support that challenge, to support the decisions that we've made, it's difficult for us to follow through. So the introduction of protocols expected to bring about several changes, consistency and fairness, like I've said, visitor access. It's likely to improve visitor access because we all know that there's some residents that live within resident parking zones that only have a certain allocation of visitor permits, and we struggle to be able to, they need more throughout as the year progresses. There will be some renewal challenges for some. A small minority of residents will face challenges when renewing permits, particularly those that may bring home works vehicles that aren't registered to the property. The protocol does allow residents who have a large vehicle or like a works vehicle that is registered to the property, they are entitled to apply to a permit with that alteration. Then there's, for the large majority of the residents, they'll be unchanged. It'll just be the same process as what it always has. So we've got the documentation to support our decisions. So we held an informal consultation. We had 3 drop-in sessions, which were very well turned out. We received representations from the majority of residents, and we had 398 representations received through the consultation. The report does expand on the in favour and against, and whilst the majority of the representations were received were against the introduction to the protocol, it was more in relation to the way that they were sort of interpreted. From what we could gather from the public drop-in sessions, they refused the protocol because it referred to if they've got access to a garage or a driver and they're not entitled to any permits. But that garage might be inaccessible, so that wouldn't be the case. So we've loosened the terms a bit, and I think it'll be a bit more understandable to the public now in the revisions that we've made. So then, adding up the totals of those that were in favour and those that weren't particularly bothered, that actually had the overall higher percentage. So there was, through the representations, there were several issues that we had to overcome. So, like for example, my garage on drive is unsuitable, so we've loosened the terms around that. So we've made it so it's an accessible garage or a driveway. We've also said that it may result in no resident permits being applied. So we've introduced a flexible permit, which allows us to be a bit more flexible. So there are some properties that might have a small driveway that they're parking a motorhome on. Yeah, they're getting that off the road, brilliant, so they're entitled to a permit for the vehicle because they've got other use. So it allows us to be a bit more flexible. A big percentage was in the lack of visitors permits, and that was the majority of those people were from the resident-only streets. So part 2 of this process, once we've got the protocol introduced hopefully, is to review the traffic regulation order and look at those streets and see how we can make those improvements. So whether we change them to disc parking zones with resident exemptions in the evening, or whether we work with the residents to see exactly what it is that we need. It might be that that road doesn't actually need to be restricted, and it could be potentially that we could remove all the restrictions altogether. Services and property tradespeople, again, that was the resident only street, so these people are restricted to resident permits and one visitor's permit with 60-something days allocation. So if that is a rented property and they need to continually go to service it, or if British Gas come, for example, to service the boiler, or some tradespeople come, they're utilising that visitor's permit, so that allocation is massively reducing, and it's difficult for them to then have visitors. Carers, again, exactly the same, mostly in the residential area streets. There was some comment regarding difficulty visiting friends. I'm unsure how, I couldn't interpret those. A lot of people's visitors that didn't live in the area, and I think that they've understood that the protocol is to be introduced on all streets, not just the ones where with the resident exemptions. We received some comments in relation to sustainable or shared transport, so as an authority that is something we want them to promote. The resident may not own their own vehicle because the majority of their travel is by train or bus or they use a bike, but they do use a family vehicle, for example, for the shopping. So we've put that they could be entitled to a flexible permit on the application. And then there were some issues in relation to returning of permits, so we've cleared that up as well. I mean, we're not asking people at the end of every year to return permits. So the biggie, parking is, everybody mentions the word parking and we all come out in hives. But the introduction of this protocol, it needs to take place. We need to have something in place. Like Dan and Rachel said, the population is going to increase, which is also going to bring more vehicles. At the moment, the on-street parking is struggling, it is at capacity, and we've got a lot of residents that live within Penrith that have access to off-street parking provisions, and they're still entitled to permits, which really restricts things for people that don't have access to off-street parking and maybe have to park a mile or so off the road, but also around works vehicles and things like that. We've got an abundance amount of them on the network. So my recommendation is for us to bring this into, allow offices to progress to advertisement and hopefully introduce it into our order before we can then do the full review again.
Thank you very much. Sensitive subject, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah, I've got broad shoulders.
So, first of all, any questions the law raised? Thanks, Phil. Mike.
Yeah, could you elaborate on this flexible permit? Paragraph 3.13, you got a flexible permit capitalised, which basically means an entity. And then in 3.14, you say a flexible second permit. Is this the same document? In other words, do you need a parking permit to get the flexible permit, or is it two separate documents?
No, so you don't need to have a resident permit to be able to obtain a flexible permit. So the purpose of the flexible permit was initially brought in to help a lot of the residents that maybe need regular care, so they're not using the visitor's permit as much, so they've got that flexible permit that resides at, it stays at that property, it doesn't have any registration number or anything like that on it, and it's for them to be able to provide to the residents or the carer or whoever comes to that property. But then through our consultation we realised that there wasn't just the people that needed care, there was also other people. So like the sustainable transport users, they might use a vehicle, borrow a vehicle 2 or 3 days a week, or they might use a hired vehicle in which the vehicle registration wouldn't comply with it wouldn't work with the way that the residents are. So the flexible permit is to allow us to be flexible, and it would just be managed on the application. So an application will be received, that will be reviewed by our civil enforcement team, and they'd be allocated the relevant permits to deal with their needs.
Yeah, I understood all that, but in 3.14, you got a flexible second permit. Is that a different entity?
It isn't, no, it's just a second permit. So if somebody's already got a resident permit, but they need if they've already got a resident permit, so for their vehicle, but they also need care, or they need a regular visitor, the daughter or the son comes every day, they could also have a flexible permit as well as the resident. So it's just how I've worded it, but yeah, it's not anything different.
So you don't need to have a first permit?
No.
To have a
No.
Right, okay. This is, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a proposer, please? Judith?
I'm happy to propose.
And a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Mary. Does anybody else want to speak on this subject? Do we have a proposer or a seconder wish to speak? Shall we have a vote then? All those in
Say
favour?
well done.
All those in favour? Is there anybody against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thanks very much. So, well done. That will take us rapidly to number 11, which is part one of the Nick Wright show.
We are don't we? So I've got two. I've got two papers today. So the first one is the Devolved Communities budget. So members will remember we did have that session, so we've had a good, thorough discussion about our budget and what the allocations of our budget. The one thing that I will bring as additional information, and members will have noticed this coming via email, we are expecting about 50,000 from household support funding money to come in. That will allow the locality board to support households with vulnerable households with urgent food, urgent energy, urgent other essential costs. In previous years, what we've done with this allocation, we've defrayed it via local support agencies, so they already have a contact, it's an appropriate thing to do, it's an efficient thing to do, and while we're not ready to be able to ask of that decision today because of where we are with the problem of the previous decision, what I would propose to do is the exact same thing again. So in terms of this particular paper, it's all pretty self-explanatory, and in terms of recommendation 2.9, I've agreed that will allow myself and the chairman to initiate the household support fund programme of support, because we can do so below 5,000. If there's anything as part of that programme, I will of course keep you updated by email. If there's anything as part of that programme that is over 5,000 in amount, then we will come back to the July locality board meeting for a decision. So that's how I'm proposing we do that. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any comments, but hopefully that wasn't anything new in the report. You all knew that what was actually coming. So I suggest that if possible, Chair will take the recommendations as a bit of a job lot that would be appropriate in this instance.
Does anybody have a problem with taking the recommendations as a coordinated job? We had a good workshop on this. I'm particularly excited about splitting it to put something into the community fund, which I'm very pleased about. We've got some money to support place action groups, and I think we're making the best of what we've got. So, do we have any questions? I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Can we have a seconder? Thanks, Mary. And all those in favour, please. Anybody against or abstaining? All unanimous. Excellent. Nick, please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. So my next one is the Safe and Strong Communities paper that I bring. I enjoy bringing every time because it updates on the status of the budget, of course, but also the work of the communities team. This paper this time around is pretty much to note in its entirety. Obviously, there's not really a great deal to report on the budget as of yet, with where we are in the financial year. But I have included an update on place action groups just to, for members of course, but also for members of the community want to read into where we are with that. Our team has been working really hard with members to set up initial meetings, but the focus over the past few months has been on year-end budget, year-end projects, so we do have a bit more capacity now. And those initial meetings will start to take place over the next couple of weeks, certainly into next month. So hopefully that's a useful update for you. The only specific ask of members at the moment in the paper is to nominate a representative to a new UK SPF Cultural Grants panel. Virginia Taylor will sit on that panel as well. It will consider grants for two areas, one being events and festivals and then the other being to increase community involvement or interaction in existing cultural and heritage type events. So that's a specific one for you, but again I'm happy to take any comments. I will do my best to answer any questions, but if I can't, as ever I'll go and speak to the team and answer outside of this meeting. But other than that, if you're happy to take through the recommendations following that, Chairman, that would be superb. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask about an aspect of the Place Action Group update that's attached to Agenda Item 12. Paragraph 4.1, it states that the office has been working with local members to consider what each local group or who they'll comprise of. Now, Council received some feedback, whether this is correct or not, I'm not quite sure, that historical community affinities and links have perhaps not always been taken into consideration when determining which communities will work within a given Place Action Group as marked on the map.
Okay.
My query is whether it's possible to be flexible about these boundaries so that communities with a natural affinity elsewhere, the other side of the boundary, might be able to swap for change.
Personally, I don't see any issue with being flexible. We probably would need to have a conversation on each one on its merits because there is an allocation of money goes into a Place Action Group which might complicate it, but I wouldn't want to blanket rule anything out. If a community feels that there's a natural fit elsewhere, then can be involved and maybe in two if it's not overwhelming them. But I think it's an important point you raised, to something that we need to consider.
I think we know what we're talking about, don't we?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
They say they lean towards Cody Stephen rather than Corbett.
Yeah.
And at the moment I'm sure they will do. Maybe when the dueling's finished they might feel more very thanks
I have asked.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we too are very aware of that, so
Chairman, can we start to accelerate the work on Place Action Groups? We're now at the end of April. We're not yet off the ground where I want to see it being, so I know we have the year end and a setup, but I really would like to move that forward. The other thing that actually happened, which I'll announce, I haven't actually talked to Michael this year because we haven't had a chance to catch up. I had a visit from somebody who had just been appointed into a position, which is the High Sheriff. And he's very, very keen, in particular, to work in rural areas across Cumbria. And in actual fact, he's targeted Alston and Fellside, because he feels that the other High Sheriffs in the past have actually done a lot of stuff elsewhere, but perhaps that part of the area has not been assisted. So what we want to do is I want to start this meeting to pull our Place Action Group together, and he will come along to actually take part and support the communities. And this is something that I've not actually come across before, because he's taken a great focus on rural communities and how we can improve rural communities. So I think this is going to be a real discussion. And Sue, I'm quite happy to discuss with you, Michael, and myself, just how we want to do this, because with your Calcatol, this might be something that we can roll out. So the more people that you have at this level championing the rural areas can only lift it and grow. I haven't a clue where it's going to go, but it's going to be organic, and I'd just like to say that, I'd like to do it before the 21st of May and have something set up, because otherwise I'm going to be tied up in hospital for a few days and a few months with a bad knee. So I don't want to lose any pace.
Absolutely. I'm very aware that with lots and lots of activity around the year end, I know that the other officers in the team will absolutely run off the feet, and I'm paying absolute tribute to them for the amount of work they've got through. But yes, this is a big thing for us, and I think one of the best things about it is we're not quite sure where it's all going to go, but we do want to put our
And
communities
we've
have that
got
power.
really positive press for it as well.
Yes, and if I may, Chair, the good news is that with the growth bid that was successful, we will be bringing in 2 new communities officers. So that's effectively doubling the size of our small team. So that's great news.
Yeah, I think we all share that sense of aversion, so let's get on with it now. Anybody else, please? Any questions or comments on the paper? Do we actually need to vote on this one?
Well, we
Just
do,
the
we
just the
need a nomination.
We need a nomination, yes, I'm sure we can agree to have a nomination. Judith looks like she wants to be nominated.
You want me to do it? We do it. So,
Sorry, I'm nominating for.
The vote confused. 2.3, we need to agree one representative for the New Shape Prosperity Fund Grants Panel.
Am I allowed to be because it's my portfolio as well?
I don't know the answer to that.
Right,
Because I'm interested in doing it, but I may have a conflict there.
if you do, find somebody else very easily, because it's the sort of thing that we all want to support.
Should we
Oh, I
nominate
don't have to
2? Should we go Judith first if possible and then a second if not? And then
Yeah.
we'll use the time for.
Okay, I propose the proposal as amendment to recommendation. Proposal for that, just as a variation to the recommendation itself, as you're proposing to, so if we just reword the recommendation.
We can reword the recommendation definitely. In the meantime, before we start doing the legal things, can we just see if there's somebody else who's prepared to be nominated?
So is this for the,
For the representative to the.
to do with festivals?
Yes.
Yes. And the cultural grants.
I'm interested in festivals and music, because I'm involved with lots of things like that. I don't know if that would exclude me or.
No,
I've got more information,
So I'm quite happy to, if I'm
Are you
involved.
happy for Michael to do it? Yeah.
well, that saves us having to reword anything, doesn't
It
it?
does, yes. Well, I'm happy to nominate Michael.
And Mike seconded, and it looks like you've been thirded and
He's
fourth.
just been doing the pantomime.
What does it entail?
Is
Is it some committee?
Is it like to be asking that question?
Yeah, is it some meetings where it's?
Yes, yes, and they'll be making grants through a panel system, and you'll have to say,
Yeah.
right, and you'll be representing us, so we'll be checking up on it. Okay, in terms of the recommendations as a whole, then, unamended, because you've got one person who can do it, do we have a proposer, please?
I'm proposing.
Thank
for
you.
3.
And Judith, so can we all put our hands up in favour, please? Is anybody voting against or abstaining? There is no urgent business, so now we can all go home. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you for the marathon. Andy, just check if you've got the right